minus.
Scott Pilgrim was dating a high schooler.
I know it's kind of weird, but it's like the first thing that they mention in the book and the movie, so I kind of just had to get it out of the way. Anyways, if you didn't know, Scott Pilgrim is a book series by Brian Lee O'Malley that was then adapted into a movie by Edgar Wright. If you're not up to date on the main characters and their dynamics, here's the basic gist of it. Scott Pilgrim's our main guy. He's kind of a crummy person, and if you idolize him, you're kind of missing the whole point of the story. Ramona Flowers, the person Scott needs to fight 7 evil exes for. Kim Pine, the love of my 16-year-old life. Almost everything she says is sarcastically funny, but we do get a lot of great character moments in the later books for her. Knives Chow.
Oh my god!
Yeah, she's the high schooler Scott was dating. She's kind of obsessive over Scott, but she gets a good arc about dealing with that. Neil, there's really not much to him. He has literally no arc except dating Knives and wanting to be with Knives, and not even in like an interesting way. He's just kind of there, but I love him. Stephen Stills, the lead guitarist in Sex Bomb with Kim Pine and Scott Pilgrim. They kind of suck as a band, but not really because I like the songs they made for the movie. And finally, Wallace Wells, the coolest man you'll ever meet, and basically Scott's mentor throughout the series. Those are pretty much the basic dynamics and characters you need to know about. There are a lot more important characters in Scott and Ramona's story, but we'll get to them later. For now, welcome to Blue Jay talks about the Scott Pilgrim book series and movie because he's excited about the anime coming out November 17th / Untitled video.
Is Scott here?
You know what?
If you've seen the movie, you've basically read books 1 and 2. Everything is pretty much the same. Scott Pilgrim still cheats on Knives, Scott Pilgrim still dates Ramona, and Scott Pilgrim is still a bad person. Although, if we're being honest, he's way more likable in the comic. Don't get me wrong, he's still an abysmal friend, but in the comics, he's basically a himbo, just a little goofy guy going through life, not knowing how much he's hurting people. In the movie, you don't even know why Ramona is dating him, or why he's even dating Ramona. Like, yeah, I know Scott likes being obsessed with Ramona, and I get that Ramona just wants a simple relationship, but they genuinely have no chemistry. Probably because they made Ramona more unlikable to make you root for Scott and Knives, which thank God that they changed, because it would have fundamentally misunderstood Knives and Ramona's arcs, which get pretty good in book 3. Because Envy Adams is such a good character. Envy is that one ex that really messed Scott up. Both of them used to date in college until one day she just suddenly dropped Scott. It was brutal. So brutal that by book 3, he's still recovering from it. Envy is pure evil and now she's back to torment Scott. Or at least that's what we hear about her from Scott. Truth be told, we really don't know what happened between the two of them. It's very common in these books to notice that Scott really isn't a reliable narrator. They do an amazing job of introducing her in the movie because they just throw us right into the drama. We find out that Envy is now dating Ramona's ex, Todd, while a song written about Scott by Envy is being played. While he's oblivious it's about her. While the tension builds and builds, and oh my god, it's just so beautiful. And it all comes to a climax in a showdown between Todd and Scott, where Scott beats Todd by literally nicely asking him to drink a cup of coffee. It's really dumb, but I love it. It's a bit different in the comics though. The fight between Scott and Todd actually ends up lasting multiple days, and it starts to bring a lot of tension between Scott and Ramona's relationship. Scott is being thrown into challenge after challenge by Envy, and this reasonably annoys Ramona because Envy still has so much power over Scott. Ramona really doesn't like Envy, but Envy isn't just a one-dimensional villain. We soon find out that she got cheated on by Todd, which was supposed to be the love of her life. Which, side note, Todd is eerily similar to Scott in style and in habit, which means Ramona and Envy definitely have a type, but Todd is what Scott could have easily become if he let his bad habits take over him. Anyways, Envy just kinda leaves after book 3. She gets no closure and she gets no happy ending. But at least it's not all doom and gloom, because we finally get some closure for Scott and Knives. He finally apologizes to her, and he finally acknowledges that what he did to her was wrong, and that he wants to be a better friend and a better boyfriend for Ramona. Guys, book 4 is hands down the best one. Probably because it's the best representation of the Scott Pilgrim series. This is the hangout book, where all they really do is talk and hang out while Scott is trying to become a better person. We get introduced to a character that's not in the movie, Lisa. You can immediately tell that Scott and Lisa are pretty close. And it's actually kind of weird that they never had a relationship, especially since they're a really good match for each other. Ramona catches wind of this, and it eventually forms into a small argument between her and Scott, which feels a little bit too real. Ramona leaves to collect herself and her emotions, and Scott, having no other place to stay, has to go to Lisa's house, where they get to talking about how they never did have a relationship, and how maybe they should have, and how maybe they should. Cut to black, and we don't know what happened. We're suddenly in a nightmare Scott is having, and we really don't know if he cheated on Ramona. But when he wakes up, we find out that he rejected Lisa's advances. There's never gonna be anything between him, because he's in love with Ramona. One of my favorite lines in the books is where Scott says that some of the stuff Ramona does would normally be deal breaker if he wasn't just so infatuated with her. He's really in love, and he needs to tell Ramona that. But in an epic battle against Roxy Richer and Knives' dad, because this is Scott Pilgrim and half of the stuff is really cool and goofy, Scott decides that literally right in the middle of the battle is the perfect time to be brave and finally tells Ramona how much he loves her. And that declaration of true love leads to Scott and Ramona finally being happy in a moment together overlooking the city that I wish could last forever. Book 5 is the one about Ramona. Ramona was Brian Lee O'Malley's favorite character, but he really didn't know much about her. Scott by this book officially has it together and is officially a better person. But as with real life, your mistakes will always haunt you. This is the book where Ramona finally finds out Scott cheated on Knives with her. Little by little, we can see the glow get brighter and brighter within her head. Which, side note, basically means somebody is going through major emotional warfare in their mind. Anyways, the glow is growing more and more within Ramona until it finally ends in an emotional climax. Not in a huge fight, but in an intimate scene between Ramona and Scott, where Ramona in their shared bed confronts Scott with the truth. And as much as it pains us because we know how much Scott has grown for her, he can't ignore his mistakes of the past. The next morning, Ramona cuts her blue hair off, which is major because not cutting her hair means that she felt secure in the relationship. There's a quick battle with the Karayanagi twins, where Scott needs to go save Kim real quick. But when he comes back, we see this scene where Ramona just starts disappearing into nothing. She's once again falling back on her old habit of leaving when things get rough. She apologizes for being a bad girlfriend and disappears. Ramona Flowers is a bad person. I haven't mentioned it before, but the reason she has a League of 7 Evil Exes is because she was the one to rip all of their hearts out. She left Matthew Patel, she cheated on Lucas Lee, and now she's leaving Scott, like she left everyone else. By book 6, multiple months have passed since Ramona left, and Scott is still going through it. He tries to get over Ramona with casual hookups with his previous exes, but it's horrible for everyone, including you watching this video. Eventually, Scott goes on a journey of self-exploration, where he finally realizes he's not a good person. He really wants her back, but to do that, he needs to accept the damage he's done to people. The damage he's done to Kim, the damage he's done to Knives, and the damage he's done to himself. Quite literally, in
Nigga Scott.
Which is a pretty funny throwaway joke in the movie, but in the book, it means so much. It means that Scott has accepted his past, and he will become better instead of ignoring it. But to do that, he needs to go fight Gideon Graves for Ramona and for himself in the Chaos Theater. And I'm not gonna lie guys, this is basically Scott Pilgrim's Avengers Endgame moment. A bit more chill because when he enters there isn't immediately a fight, but everyone important to the story is there because Scott Pilgrim just got killed. Yeah, no, I'm not playing. Scott literally dies in the book. In Scott's mind, as he's currently dying, he finally has a genuine conversation with Ramona. She came back because she's tired of being the person who always runs away. She wanted to be the person who at least says goodbye. So she apologizes to Scott for everything and gets ready to fight Gideon again with Scott. Scott and Ramona try to fight Gideon, but he's way too powerful, physically and emotionally. He makes Ramona think that she can never truly change, and immediately after, stabs her right in the back. Ramona is on the verge of death, and she has no chance of coming back because she doesn't have an extra life. Knowing this, Scott goes into subspace and keeps fighting for her. Despite everything she's done wrong, Scott still cares. And that finally gives Ramona the power to accept that Gideon will always be a part of her. but not every part of her will be Gideon's. So Scott and Ramona, both after accepting their flaws, team up and they beat him with love and understanding. But like swords representing those abstract concepts, so it's cool. They beat Gideon, Scott gets closure with Envy, and Ramona and Scott just talk things out. They both know that they have massive baggage that they need to work on, but they both decide that maybe, just maybe, they can finally stop running from the past. That maybe they can grow better together, and that maybe it's not too bad to hang to someone else. So they walk together into the future, vowing to try again. We as the readers and them as the characters don't know for sure if Scott and Ramona are going to stay together forever, but they're willing to try it again for each other.